Marcos Ramirez is chief attorney for the Puerto Rican Senate.
And we really believe, and we can conclude that on the evidence, that both the two investigations carried on by the Justice Department of Puerto Rico and the two investigations carried on by the Justice Department of the United States and by the FBI were both inefficient, incompetent, incomplete.
Former Watergate counsel Sam Dash recommended public hearings, and last fall, 5 years after the killings, the people of Puerto Rico watched, mesmerized, as the Senate hearings unfolded on television. They heard Puerto Rican policemen, questioned by Chief Investigator Hector Rivera Cruz, testify that Rosado and Soto had been murdered, shot on their knees as they begged for mercy. The police also testified that when they went to Cerro Maravilla, they had been under orders not to let Rosado and Soto come down from that mountain alive, and that later, some of the top officials in Puerto Rico's Justice Department had instructed police to lie during those investigations.
In fact, there was no clear evidence that they were terrorists, and there's no evidence at all that when they went up there, they were going to blow up communications towers. They had no explosives with them, and they couldn't have done it. And perhaps the evidence now indicates they wanted to make a symbolic gesture up on that mountain.
The Puerto Rican Senate hearings established that Rosado and Soto had carried guns, but instead of bombs, their knapsack contained barbecue starters, matches, and these homemade handcuffs. The chief attorney for the Puerto Rican Senate says it took 5 years for the Senate to organize the hearings because obtaining this and other evidence from Governor Romero's administration was extremely difficult.
The executive power, from the beginning, fought legally not to give us any information at all. Not only the documents, but also the objects, like arms and other instruments used in the crime.
Governor Romero denies his administration was difficult and says the Senate investigation was organized entirely by members of the opposition majority party.
I've been trying to get at the truth ever since this happened. But the Senate has been trying to politicize this whole thing ever since this happened.
A little over a week ago, the Puerto Rican Justice Department indicted for murder some of the policemen involved in the Cerro Maravilla shooting. Governor Romero says he wanted the indictments earlier, but the Senate committee withheld evidence.
They haven't allowed us to bring the case to trial or to have the indictments because we're not turning documents and evidence.
Governor, do you ever think that the Senate maybe looks at your Justice Department and says, we don't want to turn over this information, one, because our investigation is not complete, and two, because members of your Justice Department lied before. Members of your Justice Department coach witnesses about telling lies under sworn oath. And that maybe that's why they don't want to turn it over to your Justice Department?
Mr. Bradley, with the fact that 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 members of a department may have committed crimes, that is no reason and no valid reason whatsoever to say that the department will not be allowed to do its job. We have to sustain and reinforce our departments and our systems of justice and not trying to obstruct them as they're doing.
But, Governor, these weren't low-level members of the Department of Justice.
No, they were not.
One was the chief of the Special Investigations, another was the chief of the Division of Investigations.
Bradley, no.
I mean, these are men, Governor, who are lying, who are telling witnesses to lie. Would you want to turn over information to people like
Mr.
that?
Bradley, they're not involved in any investigation now. They have no access to it, Mr. Bradley.
But how do you know who else is in there lying? I mean, this was the action of the Justice Department that... Governor, this was the Justice Department that looked at this case and found no wrongdoing.
Mr. Bradley, you're trying to make people guilty by association.
No, I'm just saying that here's a Justice Department that took a look at Cerro Maravilla more than once and found nothing wrong. So now this is a Justice Department that all of a sudden is going to be on the up and up.
So did the U.S. Justice Department take a look at it, Mr. Bradley, and they didn't find anything.
Based on the information given to them by the Puerto Rican Justice Department.
No, Mr. Bradley, they made their own investigation. They had the grand jury investigation.
The U.S. Justice Department did indict 10 policemen in the shooting of Rosado and Soto, but only after the truth of the killings and the cover-up were disclosed in the Senate hearings. And those indictments were for perjury. No indictments were brought against the Puerto Rican justice officials who had ordered the police to lie, to perjure themselves. The Senate is now in the third phase of its investigation. Senate President Miguel Hernandez Augusto.
You have also taken what seems to be an unprecedented step in subpoenaing members of the U.S. Justice Department?
That is correct.
Why?
Because not only Puerto Rican institutions, Puerto Rican government institutions failed, but also federal government institutions failed. I think it is in the best interest of the Justice Department to find out why the FBI took the position that it took of not carrying out an in-depth investigation. Why, when they decided to investigate, having more resources than we have at the Senate, didn't go to the truth that we were capable of obtaining. Why is it? What happened? What failed? Who failed? And I think the people of Puerto Rico have a right to know. And I think the government of the United States has a responsibility to let the people of Puerto Rico know what happened.
Last week, there was sworn testimony that both the former Secretary of Justice in Puerto Rico and a former top aide to the governor lied to the Senate Investigating Committee. It's expected both will be charged with perjury.